So I remember driving up Scotland, 4 of us squeezed in a little car, sleeping bags, food, bit of wine, and sort of just driving up the road to Scotland, and just being really amazed. I'd never been there before, at how different a country it was, and just sort of driving up past Loch Lomond through to Oban, just loving it. Just the further up we got, the more I enjoyed it and liked it, and the landscape was really inspiring. And so that was the first time we went, and we used to go together, the 4 of us, sometimes 3 of us, and then later on I went there on my own, and then since then I've gone back with family and with Alex and with my daughter. And a sort of key period was I had the opportunity to have an exhibition. This is quite a long time ago, maybe 18, 19 years ago, at quite short notice, and I had previously applied for a residency which I didn't get, which was on an island in Wales. I didn't get this residency, and I thought, hang on a minute, I could go to Scotland and recreate the same thing. So that's what I did. I went to Scotland, and the show was called A Month on Ling, which is the place where I go. And I showed paintings and big charcoal drawings that I did in a month. So I went there for a month, and I made a lot of work. I made about 80 paintings and about 20 big charcoal drawings in that time. I just worked like mad. And that sort of set the sort of pattern then for how I try and work when I go there. I try and set myself some sort of project. I arrive for how long. It might be a week, it might be 3 weeks, it might be a month. And I just try and keep going, and I try and keep a focus when I get there. There's a sort of space to think. There's being outside. I mean, I draw from the landscape. I like being outside. I like responding immediately to what's in front of me. I like being affected by the weather, by the light. I like the struggle when it rains, when it's windy, when it's cold, when it's hot. And the way in which that makes you draw or paint differently, it just does. You know, you might have to balance in a different way on a rock. You might be sitting in a very uncomfortable position. You know, the rain might be affecting what the drawing looks like or the painting looks like, but I really like those traces of being outside. And sort of more recently, I've even sort of, you know, I might take rubbings and I might incorporate those into the drawings. So it's a sort of real response to the landscape. It's a very interesting landscape in that it's part industrial. It was a slate mining area. And so you've got this very severe landscape to the island. Behind you, you might be looking out west to this incredibly beautiful sort of west-facing island sea landscape, and so I love that juxtaposition. So I've always found really interesting, for example, in the city I like the man-made against the natural landscape, so the buildings against the skyline against the cloud, and so you get the same thing in Scotland, but it's a different, the dividing line's still there, but what's to either side of that dividing line's different. And then the west-facing landscape and the, if you like, the eastern-facing landscape behind you and looking out west, so this fantastic sense of looking out beyond anything. And then this sort of closed landscape, it's a bit similar to that sort of, it's the man-made and the natural again. It's a natural landscape, but it's scarred by the man-made elements. I really like that you've got this incredibly beautiful place, but the traces of people in it are really interesting. They disfigure it and they also make it quite interesting. So I really like the way in which, the way people lay out their lives within the landscape, the fences that delineate where they live, the washing lines that sort of give me a sort of structure to it, the telegraph poles marking out the spaces. So I find those are the things that interest me, and the juxtapositions of those things, one against the other. And I think coming from the city, so there's a duality to that, and then there's a duality to living in London and then going to that very beautiful, very different place, so that one informs the other, I think. So I take the city there with me, and I bring the Scottish landscape back into London with me, hopefully. And they sort of balance each other out a bit. For example, last year, the work that I did, in combination with those thoughts around my daily life here, have sort of been the inspiration for nearly a year's work since I was in Scotland last. One of the some work that I have done in the last couple of years was around the rock pools, drawings of the rock pools in Scotland, and then coming back to London and looking at the same looking in the same way at the pavement and the yard outside the studio and the floor inside the studio as well. So seeing those as the equivalent to those beach rock pools, and so seeing the similarities and seeing the differences between them. And actually the rubbings become quite important. So I'm quite often using rubbings either in the prints, or now more recently I've just been starting to make some new work where I've actually got little pieces of collage that are coming into the prints, and in order to introduce different textures, and some of the elements of collage are printed and some of the elements of collage are rubbings, and some of those rubbings are done with different colours. So I'm trying to confuse, if you like, what are the different things that come into the drawing or into the print in the end. So there might be some collage elements from some previously made prints. There might be, and they might in themselves be from the rubbings. There might be some rubbings which are on different papers, so they look different. There are some print elements which are the original bits. So if you like, I'm bringing all of those things together. And so that's quite exciting. One other thing is, if you're painting outside, it's fantastic because in Scotland nobody cares. Whereas if you're in London painting outside, they all want to see what you're doing. So you can be out in the landscape and nobody cares that you're there. Nobody's interested. Maybe one person talks to you, but there's not anybody around anyway. So I really like that.